South American archaeologists are finding unusual human remains. The skulls aren't European, but they aren't American Indian either. They belong to none of the prehistoric races known to have set foot in the New World. These skulls are as old as the Ice Age. So who were these first people to discover the Americas? And what became of them? Did they all disappear? Or did some of them survive? Prehistoric skulls were found buried in layers of soil 9,000 to 12,000 years old. They are the oldest skulls in the Americas. And this is the oldest of them all. The skull of a young woman nicknamed Luthia by scientists. Can she tell us who the first Americans were? To find out, the skull was taken to a hospital in Rio de Janeiro to begin the process of reconstructing her face. The first stage was to make a three-dimensional CAT scan of Luthia's skull in order to build a replica. The cast was then given to Richard Neve of the University of Manchester in England, one of the world's leading forensic artists, to recreate her features.
That to me is a Negroid face that has all the features you associate with a Negroid face. The proportions of the face, it doesn't say anything about it being Mongoloid.
Her reconstruction is confirmed by measurements Walter Nevis has taken of all his skulls.
The first reaction was not to believe in it. But as the results, repeated so many times, and the result is exactly the same thing. They are very similar to nowadays Aborigines and Africans, and no similarity at all with Mongoloids in Asia or with American Indians.
When people tell you that all the so-called black people in America is from Africa, you have to know that is fallacy. That's why myself and others make the videos that we do. We're trying to expose the lies that have been taught to us. In today's video, I will be showing you how the so-called American Negro is the American Indian. We're looking into researchers, philosophical and antiquarian, concerning the aboriginal history of America. Though America possesses some dark brown men approaching to black, yet it has been almost universally believed that there were no aboriginal blacks or Negroes found on this continent. But from considering the peculiar circumstances under which a black race was found in North America, I hold it more than probable that the common opinion is erroneous, meaning wrong. We finna skip forward a little bit. Torquemada undertakes to explain this remarkable circumstance by supposing that Negroes had been left there by some ship from the Philippine Islands. Remember the Negritos, the first Americans in Philippines? But as he does not quote the time when such an event had occurred, we presume it was a mere conjecture of his own to explain an anomaly of which he had been previously ignorant, And at first, we were disposed to think the supposition plausible, but as it was found on extending our researches that the Negro character of the Indians on this coast had been distinctly remarked by various navigators, even on the present day, we deem it impossible that any few individuals who were probably without women with them when left on this coast could have been able to communicate their peculiar complexion and features to entire nations, even after a period of above 200 years. The color of the Indians of the California missions, seen by La Perouse, very nearly approaches that of the Negroes, whose hair is not woolly, and in another place, the color of these Indians, which is that of the Negroes. Langsdorff, who visited San Francisco on the coast of California, confirms the observations of La Perouse, for he says the Indians there are of a very dark complexion, approaching to black. They have very large projecting lips and broad, flat Negro-like noses. Indeed, many of their features, as well as their physiognomy and almost their color, bear a strong resemblance to the Negroes. Their hair, however, is straight and long. Now, I went over this plenty of times that the only difference between the so-called American Negro and the American Indian is the hair. But we know that the American Negro can have almost any hair texture, if not any. We finna jump into this real quick to corroborate the little fact about the hair. Information respecting the history, condition, and prospects of the Indian tribes of the United States, collected and prepared under the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So this is government official. Now the book I was just reading from prior to this was talking about Indians in California. Now this is going to talk about Indians in Oregon, and as you know, that's not too far from California. In appearance, these Indians differ entirely from the Chinooks and other coast tribes of Oregon, being taller and darker. That's the only difference. Them just being taller and darker. That's it. They have quite heavy mustaches and beards on the chin, but not much on the cheeks. They almost all suffer it to grow. Several were noticed with gray heads and beards. They are an ugly and brutish race, many with Negro profiles, and some of the old men resembling Chinese figures of their deities. Now, how many of y'all elders look Asiatic in the face? Be honest. Asiatic does not equal Mongoloid. Now we finna hop back into this book real fast. As we cannot admit for a moment that these American blacks were ever driven by stress of weather across the Pacific Ocean to California, unless it be proved that they are descendants of Negroes left by the Spaniards, it will follow of necessity that they have been settled in America from the earliest ages. In another part of America, if reliance can be placed upon the correctness of the relation, a race of blacks were seen at so early a period of our history that it seems impossible to avoid the conclusion that they were aboriginal. He said it's impossible to avoid this conclusion. Peter Martyr, in describing the journey of Balboa across the Isthmus of Darien, AD 1511, 108 years before the start of slavery, gives the following history. There is a region not above 2 days' journey from Caraqua, in which there were only blackamoors, and those exceeding fierce and cruel. Only blackamoors. Another source corroborating the fact that the only difference between an American Indian and the so-called American Negro is the hair. The physiognomy of these Indians is ugly, stupid, and savage. Otherwise, they are well-formed, tolerably tall, and of a dark brown complexion. I find it funny that anytime they're mentioning a dark race, they gotta say that they ugly, brutish, or savage or something like that, you know? They have much of the Negro in their countenance, meaning face or facial expression or facial features. Only that a Negro head may be called handsome in comparison with theirs. They are principally distinguished from the Negroes by their very long, smooth, and cold black hair, meaning the only difference between them and the so-called Negroes is their hair. Now let's look into this news article by Professor Rafinesque. If you don't know who Constantine Samuel Rafinesque is, I advise you read up on him and also read his works. When we are led by systems or do not investigate and compare subjects in all their bearings, in other words, indoctrinated, we are apt to fall into these delusive mistakes. But whoever will take the trouble, as I have done, to compare the features, languages, religions, customs, etc. of all the nations of the 5 parts of the world, Asia, Europe, Africa, Polynesia, and America, will find, as I have found, that mankind is in unity with many deviations of features, complexions, languages, religions, governments, civilizations, etc., all derived from single primitive types of those effects in a common central focus. To events or reveal or uncover this result in a single but striking point, doubted to this day by superficial inquirers, it is sufficient to mention that there were in America before Columbus came, nations and tribes of the following complexions: copper, tawny, olive, dusky, white or pale yellow, dark brown, and black, but none red unless painted, and that all those complexions are also found in Asia and Polynesia and in Africa. So the author's telling you, you can find all the complexions here in America, just like you can find all those complexions in Polynesia, Asia, or Africa. The Native American Negroes or Black Indians have been seen in Brazil, Guyana, Caracas, Popayan, Choco, North California, and etc. by many early travelers and writers, and we just read of the Black Indians in North California. They are mentioned by Neuhoff, Rayleigh, Langsdorff, Danglaria, Barrows, and etc. It says the Negro features belong to the form of the head rather than the color, since these are in Africa, Asia, and Polynesia black, brown, yellow, olive, coppery, and even white Negroes. So when we read these books about the American Indians, do not get caught up in complexion. We know that we can vary in complexion naturally, and know the climate will not have any impact on that. Alright, now we in an inquiry into the distinctive characteristics of the Aboriginal race of America. It cannot be questioned that physical diversities do occur, equally singular and inexplicable, as seen in different shades of color, varying from a fair tint to a complexion almost black, and this too under circumstances in which climate can have little or no influence. Now we just read that the Aboriginal American Negroes come in all complexions. So who are they talking about here? So also in reference to stature, the differences are remarkable in entire tribes, which moreover are geographically proximate to each other. These facts, however, are mere exceptions to a general rule and do not alter the peculiar physiognomy of the Indian, which is as undeviatingly characteristic as that of the Negro. For whether we see him in the athletic cherub or the stunted Chima, in the dark Californian or the fair Baroa, he is an Indian still and cannot be mistaken for being of any other race. And this corroborates with what Rafinet said. He said that the Native American Negro comes in all complexions, just as they do in Africa, Asia, or Polynesia.